Good evening and salutations, my Days of Our Lives fans. So, Charlie has officially lost his damn mind. That's it. He's just lost it. Ava did decide that she was going to sit down and tell Trip and, let whatever fallout happens. Despite how many times Charlie kept begging her to not do it. So at this point, she's about to open the door. Trip is knocking on the door. This dude, this guy takes a vase and bops her upside her damn head. I'm like, okay, you just don't care anymore, right? That's it. You just completely lost it. Now, this is something that did escape me yesterday. And, I gotta kind of talk about it a little bit. So while Ava was sitting there giving Charlie a lecture on him raping Allie, she was all like, "Oh, you forced him, you forced yourself on her." I was like, didn't you force yourself on Steve? So let me just get this straight. You're a rapist, and you're giving your son a lecture. You're a rapist yourself. Okay, all right. That's something. But yeah, he just completely snapped, bops her upside the head, and then he just sits over her body while Trip is knocking at the door. At this point, Charlie's like, all right, you know what? I guess somebody else is gonna have to die today. So he picks up a pair of scissors. I don't know why he didn't pick up any knives, but whatever, fine. So now he's like standing by the door. Trip is at this point, he's about to just kick down the damn door. But, he decided not to do it because he felt like he might be overreacting. So he goes to get his dad. They come back together. Steve picks the lock because, he's just awesome like that. And then they realize that, well, no one's here. There's not a mess or anything. It's amazing how much time he actually had to clean everything up, make sure everything doesn't look like it's a mess. All the broken stuff off the vase is just swept up. So when Ava wakes up, she's tied up on a chair, and Charlie is just standing there like, well, like a nut job. Awesome. The whole time he's all like, oh, I couldn't let you do this to me. He checked to make sure that she was still breathing. He's like, oh, good. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to hurt her, but you knocked her over the side of the head with a vase. You didn't mean to hurt Allie, yet you forced yourself on her. You don't seem like you mean to do a lot of things, and yet things just seem to happen. That's just, wow. So yes, now you're standing over her like a villain, and I don't remember what you said, but pretty much like, you're not going anywhere, and something along to that effect. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really remember. But yeah, so now he's captured Ava, and I guess tomorrow's episode should actually be pretty interesting. I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow's episode. Like, I was really looking forward to today's episode. So yeah, Days is, in some ways, is getting good. And I do say that loosely. Yep, it's that time. It's that time to talk about the moron. The moron named Allie. Jesus Christ, this woman just gets worse and worse and worse by each episode. So Steve talks to her, and he's like, listen, I need you to sit there and just kind of go over it again. Tell me the story. At first, she tells the story, and halfway through it, Steve was like, oh, well, and you kissed him and stuff like that. And then she just, like, jumps on him. I was like, whoa, sweetheart, why don't you just finish the goddamn story instead of jumping? It just, oh my goodness, I really can't stand this woman. I just can't stand her. So anyway, she goes through the story, and then she talks about like a hand is forcing her down. And Steve asks a really important question. Steve is like, was it Tripp's hand? And she says something along the lines of, well, it had to be his hand. You know, because the DNA test proved, so it had to be him. I'm like, and the way she seemed like she was so unsure. The way she seemed like she was so unsure. This is my main reason why I do not like this woman. I mean, besides the fact that she just comes across as a moron, this is exactly why I don't like this woman. If she wasn't too sure telling her story again, but yet she just kept sitting there saying, oh, well, it had to be Tripp. It had to be Tripp. It couldn't have been anyone else except for Tripp. I was like, oh my God, okay. I can't with that woman. You know, and I want to sit there and, you know, when you say something like that, when you sit there and accuse someone of rape, or sexual harassment, or whatever it is, you better damn make sure that you are 100% accurate with everything that you're saying. Because if there's a detail that's just missing, or it slipped, or whatever, you're messing with someone's life. Okay? You can't afford to start getting details wrong, or I sort of remember this, or I might have remembered that, or it had to be this person, because that right there just irritates the living life out of me. Because usually 9 times out of 10, even if they're found innocent, there's still going to be that one person, or those few people, that's going to always sit there and think that this person's guilty. Regardless if the evidence comes up, you don't practically ruin this person's life forever. Now, if they did it, then absolutely. But if they didn't do it, and you accuse them of that, I mean, that's just time, emotional stress, and everything else that they're never going to get back. So for her to stand there and have that dumb, idiotic look that she had on her face, I cannot begin to tell you how much that angers me. I am trying not to curse. Lord, that is really hard. So at some point, Kate comes out, and Kate is all like, oh, you know, I want to make sure you're going through with your case or whatever, and, you know, he's like, I'm doing it, and I have practice, and then once again, she gives the idiotic answer of, it had to be Tripp because it just had to be him, and, you know, Kate is going along with that because she has personal reasons why she doesn't like Tripp and, you know, the DNA evidence. So, there's that. What else we got? Now let's get to a somewhat annoying part. You got Jake and Kate. I know it's probably going to be annoying for a lot of other people. But you got Jake and Kate just in a hotel and just kind of hanging out. At some point, you know, they're both glad that they're not really screwing around at the mansion. You know, Kate brings up the fact that, you know, no one can ever know. They're a little secret because of Chad and yada yada yada. And Jake is like, you know, that's fine or whatever, but, you know, like I still want it at some point, you know. So they're just kind of talking, nothing really major or anything like that. Back at the other side of town, this is where the annoying part starts. And that part is Jennifer. Here's the thing about Jennifer that is really starting to just irk me. You know, she is talking to Julie, and she's all like, oh, well, I still think that Jack and Kate are still doing stuff because, you know, I heard her on the phone. I was like, first of all, sweetheart, you were eavesdropping. You got in her private conversation when it wasn't necessary, it wasn't warranted, and you just assumed that it was your husband. Meanwhile, there's, I don't know, a bunch of guys in town that she could have been talking to, but your idiotic self decided to just zoom right in on Jack. You know, the guy that you kicked out the house, you never want to have anything to do with, but yet you still want to sit there and get temper tantrums and start acting like a 16-year-old little girl. Where was I? So yeah, she's sitting there talking to Julie about that. And at some point in the conversation, and I don't remember how, but she's like, oh, well, I'm pretty sure Jack is at the hotel with her. I don't want to know. I want to know. I don't want to know. That got me like, okay, this scene needs to end very fast. At some point, Julie decides, she gotta connect or whatever at the hotel. So she calls one of her friends, and she's like, hey, listen, did you see my friend or whatever, or yada, yada, yada. Try to get some information to see who Kate is with. So Kate did check in, and she did check in with a guy under the name, starts with J. And she's like, oh, it just has to be Jack. Because there's nobody else in that whole town of Salem that has a J name at all. And then she's all like, well, he probably moved on and he probably gave up on me. And I'm like, good, you're annoying. Honestly, to tell you the truth, at this point, it's really hard for me to have sympathy towards her, because if you want to kick this guy out and you don't want to actually be involved with this guy, that's fine. But make up your own damn mind. Don't actually have, the nanny make up your mind for you. She quoted Gwen, and she was all like, oh, well, it's just like what Gwen said. You're in trouble when you sit there and start quoting stuff from Gwen. And she's all like, oh, well, once that trust is broken, you can't undo it, and yada, yada, yada. I was like, Jennifer, at this point, I really don't care. I don't care. It's exactly what Kate said. At some point, every man has a breaking point. And, he's not going to sit there and keep constantly groveling to you. And if he decides to go with Kate or anybody else, oh, well. That's on you, sweetheart. I mean, you kicked him out so many times. You was nasty. You was rude to him when he was begging for your forgiveness. And you honestly think he's going to sit there and still grovel to your feet? Wow. So while she's having a little temper tantrum over at Julie's house, well, you got, what do you got? You got Gwen being Gwen, like usual. She decides to not tell, Chad that, she's going to be working late and stuff like that. And, Chad is still convinced somehow that, Abby is having an affair with Jake, even after he apologized, and you thought that he just let it go. But no, he didn't. So he decides to go to the garage, and he's all like, oh, well, I just want to, I'm going through some work stuff. Come on, bro. It's mad late to be sitting there going over some work stuff. If you want to sit there and try to catch a maniac for whatever reason, instead of, trusting your wife when she said that she was not with Jake, and just constantly sitting there listening to Gwen because, well, let's be honest, she's a mean-spirited bitch that we have no understanding of why she's doing what she's doing. So at some point, literally 47 minutes later, Abby comes back. She just comes to the show, and Jake asks, Abigail to look over some papers or whatever, and Abby's all like, no, I'm swamped or whatever. And then she's like, oh, I don't want us to sit there and be together, alone or whatever, because, Chad is already suspicious. And I'm like, well, that's Chad's problem. And I get it to a certain extent as far as, respecting your marriage and stuff, but there's a fine line between respecting your marriage and having this man tell you who you should and shouldn't be with. Oh, I don't want you to be with him alone. Y'all live in the same... How is that even going to work? Y'all live in the same house. You don't think at some point that y'all two aren't going to cross? what was going to happen when y'all decide to go get tea or something like that? You're going to be like, oh, you know what? Let's I'm in this room first. You just got to wait until I leave, and then you can come in. Like, I mean, what are we doing? Y'all are a bunch of grown-ass adults. So I don't understand how she was all like, oh, well, I don't want Chad to sit there and catch us together because, you know, he's already upset. Like, seriously, sweetheart? Really? And just the old convenient timing. The old convenient timing of Jake sitting there saying, oh, well, you know, we wouldn't want to make, you know, Chad more suspicious than he already is. And Chad just happened to be right by the door. Gwen just giving her smug-ass smile because reasons that are clearly not important to us because it's been 3 months and this is where we are because of reasons. That's great. Whatever. Honestly, tell you the truth at this point, I just maybe, you know what, maybe in 2021 we may actually know why Gwen is doing what she's doing. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. That'd be, what, 4 months that we just went through? And yeah, I think that's actually about it. Like I said, Charlie has finally snapped. Jennifer's annoying. Allie's a moron. That's nothing new. Gwen is a snake, because reasons. And, yeah, again, I just found it really well, not even really interesting, just like, what? So, just the fact that Ava actually had the audacity to sit there and chastise Charlie for the same thing that she did. Did she just, like, have amnesia and just totally forgot that she forced herself upon Steve? But you're going to sit there and give your son a lecture about not to force, you know, yourself on a woman when you pretty much did the exact same thing? Like, what, you just excuse it because you're a woman? I just, You know, honestly, tell you the truth, now that I think about it, I actually feel bad for Tamara Bay a little bit. Because this is the second role that I've seen her in where she, well, she pretty much played a rapist. There's no going around that. And yes, I get it, on GH, she didn't go through with it with Drew, but she nearly did. And at that point, she just became a trash-ass character and left poor Charles. And now she's at Salem, being kind of trashy. Kind of a trash-ass character. There's just... It is what it is. With that being said, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this episode. I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow's episode. Sorry this episode's coming out so late. It would have been done earlier, but, you know, snow and... Snow. So, yeah. Which I'm actually happy about that they didn't interrupt, days, because I really thought that they would, and I was going to have to go on YouTube. So, awesome.